Welcome to Healthy University, where we'll discuss issues and subjects on how you can live a healthier and more productive life. And now, here's your host for Healthy University, Alan Eisenberg.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Healthy You. This is your host, Alan Eisenberg, and as usual, I'm extremely excited today to have one of my former guests who's also become sort of a colleague of mine in the bullying recovery and anti-bullying industry. We get to talk quite often. In fact, I was on her own podcast a little while ago, and it was a great conversation because I think as we talk more together, we form more of a bond and understand each other. So today, I have Melissa Wilson with us. She's the creator of thegrassgetsgreener.com, a site and a podcast that helps adult survivors of childhood trauma, particularly childhood bullying, overcome the lasting effects of their trauma to become the person they desire to be. Melissa herself is a survivor of childhood bullying and child abuse. She uses her past experiences, along with a background in psychology, to guide her in the work she does today. Melissa's mission is to help those who feel stuck in life as a result of their past trauma get unstuck and live an amazing life. So welcome to the show again, Melissa.
Oh, thanks for having me back on, Alan.
So that was your same intro from before. So is anything new going on?
I think that's still pretty accurate.
Great. I know you continue to do the podcast. I listen to it. I always recommend my audience. If you like this one, you'll love Melissa's as well. It's just a great show with great guests and a great host, of course. So I think
thank you. Yeah, and of course you were my first repeat guest, so
yeah.
If people haven't had a chance to check that out, I guess they can go and give that a listen.
Yeah, and I hope you find out what I'm saying is I'm starting to have a lot of repeat guests, and the second conversation kind of goes easier in terms of the familiarity. We're able to talk a lot easier in a flow, and I really like that. I always say I like to keep my show conversational because I think that's the best way to really get to the issues that we're talking about because they're serious. And sometimes we get on a tangent about something very serious. But today we're going to talk about stress, anxiety, and how Melissa and I have both learned to deal with these things that are part of the life of a survivor of abuse. Whether that abuse is bullying or other ways, we know that these things are very common. So, I know, Melissa, to me, stress is such a big issue today. In fact, I just did a presentation about it. And I was explaining in the presentation what was fascinating in my research is that 60% of illnesses that we have, both physiological and mental, are caused by stress.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And so what do you think is really creating that too much stress? Because the other thing I talk about is there's a balance. There's a good stress point, and then you hit that plateau, and then it just destroys you, and it becomes the thing that really sets everything else off, right? So how do you deal with it? What do you see as the main causes?
Yeah, I think it's true what you said there that, not all stress is bad. Stress can be useful at times, but it's when it gets to that point where it's chronic and it's just causing us problems, And I think, from my experience, from my observations, I think that a lot of times it just comes from people not taking enough time for themselves. I think, where we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be productive all the time, like 24/7. We have to be getting something done, right? We're not allowing ourselves to take breaks. And that's just kind of the society that we're in. And, it's kind of like how kids need recess at school. We need to take breaks too.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I've been hearing that, I don't have like firsthand experience with this, but I've been hearing that like schools are trying to do away with recess, or it's not as common as it used to be, and the
Mm-hmm.
kids are suffering for it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, it's probably contributing to them, having ADHD and all this stuff, because they're just not, they don't have that outlet that they need. And so I think that's just kind of the society that we're in today, and
Yeah.
unfortunately it kind of drives us to that. And I think it's also just being connected all the time too. That
Yeah.
definitely can contribute to stress.
And
And
we're a
feeling
bit
like you always have
connected.
to
Yeah.
yeah, or just feeling like you always have to respond to people right away, or
Oh yeah.
there's
Oh
always some
yeah.
fire that needs to get put out.
And we're disconnected, connected. So, and I guess what I mean by that is we see all of these things going on. Like when I use Facebook with my friends, I use it strictly for friendship. I use other products for business, but I'm not interested in putting up a negative item on my Facebook page, my personal one. I'm only going to talk about positive things going on in my life. I just don't feel like that's my place for it. That's I like to share good news there, and again that I as you probably do know people that only post bad things. They're all going, woe is me, or they're foodies or taking pictures of food or whatever it is. But it, it's not one of the problems is we start to believe that's our lot, someone else's life, and then we start to compare our lives. I think, so if someone's looking at my page and they go, "Wow, Alan's always got something fun going on," and not me. Well, that's not true. It's just the way I'm using it. But to them,
Hmm.
that's the perception, and that it's been shown that that's creating a lot of stresses as well.
Yeah,
Well, yeah.
I think people, I mean, to that point, like people are not taking the time to find out what makes them happy. They're
Hmm.
looking at what other people are doing and thinking that those are the things that are going to make them happy.
Hmm.
And maybe that's not the case. They need to figure out what's gonna, what feels right for them and not stress about what other people are doing.
Well, and that's a part of human nature we need to work on. That we do. When I gave this presentation the other day, I used a pretty cool tool to be able to do a survey on the spot with these people. I said, well, what is the thing that makes you most stressed? And of course, work was much higher than many other things, with children and family being second. And what that tells me is sort of what you were saying, which is we are not relaxing at work. We don't take that recess or that break, and we always feel like we have to be on. Like, oh, what if an email comes in while I'm at lunch, and something needs to be done, or this, or I have to be there for that. And I'm ADHD anyway. I should have been diagnosed it as a kid, but I wasn't. So I can't sit at my desk at work for more than an hour. So I get up. Luckily, our office had kind of a circle, so I just I walk around it. And I'm sure everybody thinks I'm crazy, but it's my break. It's my moment to allow myself to take a break. And,
Hmm.
and everybody should do that. There's great devices out there, even the apps, and that'll force you like every half an hour to stop and take a break. Uh, you can put on your computer, and it really is effective. It truly is. They don't make these things because they're ineffective. Um, but it's
Yeah.
interesting to me that people have the work problem, and I think the school problem, and I think they're both in the same vein, which is this idea, and even as technology continues to evolve, it gets kind of worse, that we have to be perfect. That we have to do things to a level of perfection that's unrealistic.
Hmm.
And I think that creates a lot of stress. I know for me that created a lot of stress. Yeah, believing that I wasn't allowed to make a mistake.
Yeah.
Uh,
Or that we can't disappoint people.
yeah, but as I explained to people, I'm not a brain surgeon. I'm not putting people into space. I'm not doing all these things where people could actually die. I'm creating websites. So, what's the worst that's going to happen? I guess getting your information hacked is probably on the list, but even that, is not likely in what I do.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, not that you want to be slacking, but like
no,
you
but
don't want to make it more stressful than it needs to be, you know.
well, and the other thing is, there's a real interesting study that came out pretty recently about working mothers, and it showed that their children were much better off if the working mother took a half an hour to do something for themselves, like say go to the gym or even shop on a daily basis, and then came home or whatever, than the ones who didn't. The children were much healthier and happier. And I
Hmm.
think that's the other thing we have to remember is that we have to take care of ourselves before we take care of others. And that's
Hmm.
very backward for us because it sounds selfish, but really it's not because you really don't have, I believe you really don't have the ability to take care of others unless you take care of yourself first.
Hmm.
So that's another thing. So how have you learned? What techniques are you using today to handle the stress in your life?
Well, I use a few different things. One of the things that I like to look for like patterns, and I try to notice like what's working for me, what's not working for me. What do I need to improve upon?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I recognize is that, well, and this is, I'm sure, the case for a lot of people, I'm always most relaxed on the weekends,
Mm-hmm.
when I have just less responsibilities, less on my plate. I mean, I've kind of set up my weekends to really just disconnect and reset and just have fun. And so what I try to do is, look for ways to create opportunities for that during the week as well.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, like time management has been really important for me. I have my schedule that I like to stick to that, I know that works for me, that allows me to take the time that I need during the day to um, just for myself to relax,
Mm-hmm.
and not push myself beyond what I know um, feels good for me. And I mean, of course, there's exceptions to that. You have times where you have deadlines or commitments and stuff that you have to kind of push yourself, but that should be more the exception and not the norm. And I like to get outside as much as I can,
Yeah.
and I'm very fortunate that I live somewhere where the weather is pretty good most of the year, and it's easy for me to get outside. So whenever I can, I mean, I'll even just go out on my balcony and do work out there, or I'll go to a park or something, or go by the beach and just get outside and go for walks. And I set aside time each day to exercise.
Mm-hmm.
That's really important for me. And disconnecting after a certain time, like I think like after 8:30 at night, my phone goes into do not disturb mode. So
Yeah.
because I don't want to have anything kind of coming in and affecting my ability to like be able to go to sleep. And you don't want to get stressed right at that time of the day if you don't need to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I just like I take time for myself each evening, and kind of do whatever I want to do, whatever's gonna kind of help me to unwind and get ready for the next day. Meditation has also
Mm-hmm.
played a part. I don't do it as much as I'd like to do it, but when I do it, I like to do it like right before I go to sleep. It kind of helps
Mm-hmm.
me
Mm-hmm.
to unwind and clear my head and sleep a little better. And then also, with that, just going to bed on time as well. And eating well too, I think
Mm-hmm.
is part of it also. So yeah, I think those are the things that I do to help me handle stress.
Well, and I do too. Every one of those exact things. And you mentioned a really good one, which people really struggle with, and I imagine it's hard for some people, but you know, developing a routine to your
Hmm.
day, and that can sound like your life's boring, I guess, to some people, but you're going to bed on time every day. It's really shown that that's what you should be doing. And then, of course, there's a certain amount of hours you should sleep. And of course, what we know is when stress builds up, and that builds up will hit a little later in the second half, maybe on anxiety and some of the other things that come along. Sleep is the first thing to go. I mean,
Mhm.
if you're stressed about something and it's ruminating in your mind, and we all know this. And then if you have no outlet for that, that'll keep you up at night easily. And
Mhm.
then when you don't get your sleep, well, everything else starts to go south very quickly as well. And yeah, I think that mindfulness activities, whether that's meditation, yoga, movement, a walk, all of these things are mindful. Eating can be mindful. What you're eating, how you eat. You know, I was a very fast eater for a long time. I'm really working to try to slow down and enjoy the food instead of just consume it. All of these things are proven amazing helpers to help us get past things like stress. And now they're even getting medical credence, where acupuncture and massage are being brought into the medical world as really effective ways to deal with things. And I'm glad, and I know that they're even starting with little kids now, doing a little bit of it. I can tell you when I meditate, most of the time I'm falling asleep, whether it's my time to go to sleep or not. It's just,
Right. That's why I
you
do
know,
it right before I go to sleep.
yeah. And it's a practice. One of the other thing I always emphasize is we have to get past that perfection mentality. You could practice it one day and it's really easy, and another day it could be really hard.
Mhm.
And it's the same with yoga. It's the same with any activity you do where you're trying to be mindful. If your mind's just not letting you focus at that moment, it's very difficult. And what I always tell people is I've learned to take like a back seat to me. So sometimes when that's happening, I try to look at myself and go, why am I not? Why is Alan the person not able to do it today? What's going on?
Mhm.
What's the driving motivation? Uh,
So
so
looking
so
at it from that outside perspective.
right. So what have
Mhm.
you learned from that idea? What have you learned about yourself through your own work doing your podcast about these subjects and your own recovery in your own life?
Well, I've learned I still have some work to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but one of the things that I'm still working on, and when I started the podcast about 2.5 years ago now, I was like really timid about it and afraid to put it out there, and afraid to like
Mm-hmm.
to interview people and everything. And I've gotten much more comfortable, but I find that I'm like still not as confident as I'd like to be, and
Sure.
that's an area that I have to continually work on. And I find that, I still hold myself back in some ways where I'm letting the fear take over sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
is, I mean, sometimes, fear can be useful, just like some stress can be useful. But
Mm-hmm.
other times it can get in the way, get in the way of you doing what you know you should be doing or what you really want to do. Um, so I think those are a couple things I've learned about myself.
And I think it's hard. Uh, I know for me, I'm getting past it, but in the work that we're doing, in the choices we've made to, you know, come full on about things that happened to us as children, that affected us as adults, that affect others, that are not necessarily the things a lot of people will talk about publicly because, again, in a lot of ways, mental health still has a stigma attached to it that's very hard to get over for a lot of people. And these subjects are tough. Uh, I admittedly say, it's tough. Sometimes when I first started telling my stories and sharing my inner workings to try to help people, it would bring me to tears. It would make me relive things that weren't I wasn't prepared for, and it took me a while to learn. I had to overcome my own issues while trying to help others.
Hmm.
Uh, But I always tell people the same funny story, which is, I did go to therapy, and I am a big self learner, and I was toward the end of therapy when I was feeling better, I was reading article after article, and I went in one day and I just said to my therapist at the time, I was like, "Did you read this article? Isn't this unbelievable? This new finding?" And he's like, "No, no. What's that about?" And I thought, now I'm at the point where I'm teaching my therapist. It's time
Right.
to start just doing it myself. But but it was funny because that's who I am. That's why I do the things I do, right? Is that I am passionate, and you're passionate about this idea, I think. And that's why I find myself, liking to talk to you, because I feel like I've found kindred spirits through the work I do. Do you find
Mhm.
that? Do you find people are more like you than you thought
Yeah,
originally?
yeah, definitely. I mean, and the more people that I talk to from my podcast, the more people I find who are, yeah, kind of similar to me in some ways. And, um, I mean, because when I was, back a while ago when I was first starting on like, my healing journey, I felt very alone, and
Hmm.
I didn't really, think about how there are these other people out there going through what I'm going through. And now, I certainly don't feel alone anymore. And
Yeah, yeah,
and it's amazing how many people out there that have gone through things, like you and I have gone through growing up. And it's great to see people who are doing well today now too, in spite of that. You know,
yeah. And
so
I've
I
I've had
love,
yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
I love connecting with
Yeah.
people like that. It's great.
And I've had some amazing experiences just recently where, I've basically let it be known at work that I do this work now. My main job is in IT and not in this. This is my passion, my passionate work. But I'm trying to marry the two quite a bit. And it's interesting as people have discovered this about me. I have people popping into my office, and I just had someone last week who broke down in tears, and I had to basically, we were working on something, and I stopped working and I put on my coaching hat and said, okay, if you want to talk, let's talk.
Hmm.
And they know these people are here now. They know there's somebody here that'll listen, even at their workplace, which I'm very discreet, and I don't mind helping people, certainly. Um,
Yeah, isn't that
what,
interesting? I mean, there's
yeah.
so many people out there. I mean, you can, walk past people on the street and you have no idea what they're
Well, that's
going
what
through or where they're coming from,
yeah, that's what I said when I was giving my stress presentation. I said, 20% of women and 10% of men, although I'll argue it's 20%, but the other 10% are using alcohol and drugs as a coping mechanism because they're too strong to admit it,
Mm.
are dealing in depression every day. And so if you've got 20 people in a room, who's wearing the mask?
Hmm.
Somebody is. It's what we do.
Yeah.
So when we come back, we got to take a quick break, but when we come back, I'd like to talk a little bit about anxiety and kind of how you keep yourself grounded and the other work you're doing to stay healthy. So if you'll hold on a second, Melissa, we'll be right back after these messages.
You're listening to Healthy University with Alan Eisenberg.
Hi, and welcome back to Healthy You. This is Alan Eisenberg, and I'm here with Melissa Wilson today. And we're talking about stress and anxiety. So we've been talking about stress a bit. The other big issue, and I think they fall hand in hand. I think that stress is what I was calling it, how we talk about gateway drugs. I think stress is the gateway to almost everything else. We start with stress, and then it grows to something else, anxiety, depression, other mental health issues, um, because it's just the precursor. And I think that's where that data comes from. That's 60% of illness is tied to stress. But anxiety, I know I've dealt with it. So many people seem to be dealing with it. I'm shocked. One of the things that woke me up um, was that I thought I was very alone in my anxieties when I had them. And when I had it was tied to, of course, self-esteem and other things, that also anxiety is a portion of your instinct of fight or flight. And as I say, for me, it was broken. My fight or flight got broken with bullying, because I saw a lot of things as danger that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. Um, so how do you deal with it? How do you deal with anxiety issues?
Well, yeah, there's a few things I do to kind of help me with that as well, for when that comes up for me. Um, I think one of the big things is managing stress,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean you're
Mm-hmm.
right. I mean um, it's kind of the precursor for it, Um, and then also, I mean, taking time to have fun, like we were talking
Mm-hmm.
about earlier, that definitely helps. I guess, because it helps to reduce the stress, which helps to reduce the anxiety. Um, I like to also, try to keep myself distracted. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling
Mm-hmm.
anxious, I have to get out of my head.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll put some music on or just have some video going, something to keep me, kind of in the present moment.
Yeah,
Um, it,
it's cool that you talked about music because that's being proven too.
mhm,
And we're not talking about like some weird Taoist music or anything. They're actually saying that your favorite music, that sometimes even, like if you're a metalhead, listening to your favorite metal band can release that pent up feeling.
mhm,
So I've always believed in music. I mean, personally, I use music as a healing method often because I love lyrics. I think, musicians are the modern poets and use it all the time. I'm sorry, I think I
yeah.
interrupted you when you were
No,
saying
I
something.
no, I mean I agree about the music. I mean it's always been a big part of my life. Whenever I've been, going through some tough times, I always turn to music, and it's great
Hmm.
because you can either, you can listen to something that kind of picks you up and makes you feel good, or you can listen to something that allows you to kind of tap into your feelings and allow you
Hmm.
to release them.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, sometimes you want to listen to that sad song
mhm,
because y- there's an understanding, that again, this idea we're not alone. I mean, they're musicians are key people who express their problems through their music, and we see that. I mean, we see actors, musicians. Uh, they tend to be in the artistic field, deal with a lot of emotional aspects to their jobs, and I think they're more emotional people typically.
mhm, yeah. Um, but for me, it's also, about just kind of better understanding anxiety and what it is and what's causing
Hmm.
it, and learning how to better control my emotions and my thoughts, so that I'm kind of in charge of my mind rather than it being in charge of me and how I'm feeling,
I, I say
um,
that exact same thing all the
really.
time. That's my line. Is like the biggest thing we can learn is that we own our minds. Our minds don't own us,
Hmm.
and we can change the way they think. But that takes an extreme point of belief
Mm,
because most of us think because we're a thinking animal, and I do like to say that we are animals, um, but we have this mind that allows us to think and and we think that by thinking that makes us higher. Well, sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, because we still have the instinctual aspects of animals. We still have, things we do that are not part of the thinking part. And a lot of that is where anxiety comes from, right? That fight or flight or flee, which is, I mean, my cats have that problem. They're just, animals. That's an instinctual thing that we all have, and I think it can be broken. It can be a broken instinct. That's my opinion about what happened to me. Um, but also, learning to accept it and work through it. I had the weirdest one. I remember when I was at the height of sort of my downtime, and my anxiety was just raging. I bought a book, of course, how to deal with anxiety, and one of the things that I said to myself, I said, I'm crazy, like, because I would go to the barber, and it would be all I could do to sit in that chair. That once they put that that smock around me and secured it, I felt claustrophobic. I had a panic attack. I wanted to get out of there so bad. And I just sat there and, hoped for a quick haircut. And I'm like, it's the barber. And I'm having a panic attack. And then I'm reading this book and it says, yeah, some people even are known to have anxiety attacks when the barber puts the thing around their neck. It's like claustrophobia. And I'm like,
It said
just
that.
normal. It was in the book. I mean, I'm like, I'm just a normal guy having normal,
Mhm.
reactions that are even in books, and I'm not. We all think we're the only ones going through this, and
And that
so
leads to
many
more
people have.
anxiety too, doesn't
Right,
it?
right, exactly. Like, because if you think you're crazy, you think.
Hmm.
And certainly, this is where with anxiety, I do believe in things like cognitive behavioral therapy, where you just have to keep going. You just have to work through it, because it will go away. If you tell yourself it will go away, it will.
Hmm.
If you continue to tell yourself the story that I have this anxiety and I can't get rid of it, then it's going to be with you for a very long time. But it's that
Yeah.
same idea that they've proven that that repetitive environment. And I was even telling people, about every airport in the country has a plane that never takes off, and it's for psychologists and psychiatrists to take patients who have problems with flying and do the cognitive behavioral, sit on it for 5 minutes, leave, go back, sit on it for 10 minutes,
Hmm.
till eventually they break that fear. And it's amazing these things work, right? And you go, that's crazy, but that's what we know is they work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. There's.
what
Yeah.
yeah.
No. No. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so how do you stay grounded? How do you make it every day, now? What is it, the routine? Is it the um, what keeps you most grounded?
Yeah. I mean, so you're talking like being kind of in the present moment, right? And just.
Yeah, yeah, that
Yeah.
mindfulness aspect, that,
Yeah.
that idea of being present.
Hmm.
And it's when we're present that we don't focus on the past, which puts fear in us, or which makes our self-esteem go down if we think, oh, I made this mistake and I made that mistake. Well, you can't fix that. I mean,
Right.
there's no going back. And then the future, worrying about the future. So how do you stay grounded in the present?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely like. I have to find ways to get out of my head, right? Because if not, then that's when I'm either in the past or in the future. Um, and I start like, first thing in the morning. When I wake up, I kind of just like check in with my body, see how I'm feeling, and focus on my surroundings. And I think that helps me to kind of just be grounded in that moment to start my
Mm-hmm.
day.
Mm-hmm.
And I focus on my breathing and you know do some take some deep breaths at
Mm-hmm.
that time. And I mean, just throughout the day, I try to catch myself whenever I'm having negative thoughts and
Mm-hmm.
just reframe them. Um, and it also helps me to kind of like, if I'm really like finding myself really having a hard time being in the present moment, I'll just like say out loud what I'm actually doing right then, like
Yeah.
I'm brushing my teeth right now, or I'm getting a glass of water, literally just say that stuff and it'll bring you right into the present.
Oh yeah, and that's the same thing I was talking about. Like when we're experiencing an anxiety or a stressful time, one of the things you can do is exactly what you're saying keeps you grounded. Is you this is how you play that third person part with yourself. Is like, I'm having this happen to me right now. I wonder why that is. If you can be present enough to stop and do that, and question your own body, because again, it's that idea that we're in control of our minds aren't in control of us, but we have to practice that. That's not just going to be magically felt that we can do that. It takes a lot of, like, okay, now I understand why things are happening. That doesn't mean they won't happen,
Mm.
but now I can question them a little more. I have some more, like you say, some more ammunition. Do you do any gratitude journaling or reading affirmations or any of that?
Yeah, I actually use what's called a 5-minute journal. I don't know if you're
Mm-hmm.
familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I do that each morning. So I write down like 3 things you're grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
What it's like 3 things that would make today a great day,
Mm-hmm.
and then just like 3 affirmations or just some affirmations as well. So I find that helps a little bit. Gets me
Yeah.
gets me
I
focused on
think
gratitude, which is definitely important.
Yeah, I actually think it helps a lot. I think one of the things I always tell people is, for years and years, while I was a fairly negative person, um, I would call myself a realist. Oh, I'm such a realist. I'm not negative. I'm real. This is what's really going on. And and then when you really realize that your negativity is weighing on you, I started writing positive things. And what it does is when I fell, when I had my dark period, I started thinking I was never happy. I've never had happiness. All these things, all these things your mind is telling you or you're telling you. And then by just gratitude journaling every day and saying, "Hey, here's 3 good things that happened today. I happen to do at the end of the day." But you can't deny that every day has a balance. You can't deny that, life is a balance. And there's going to be good in every day and there's going to be bad in every day, probably. But I focus on the good, of course, to try it because I can easily focus on the bad. That's not a problem for me.
Right.
but
I hear
but
you.
uh, but so you have to focus on the good.
Hmm. Takes
So
practice. Yeah.
yeah, and what have you found like through your own podcast? What themes keep repeating themselves? Because what I've found is like, hey, these themes keep coming up. Even the top-notch doctors or experts in the field talk about anxiety, stress, kind of what we're hitting on today. Always come up. What are you finding? Like the people you talk to, a lot of same issues come up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, one of the things that's been coming up a bit lately and I've been talking about is like just how, we're stronger than we realize.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of my guests have been through a lot of stuff and, it's not like we're not comparing stories, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's incredible what, some people have been through and have been able to get through and to get to a place now where they feel good about their lives. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's just the case if you look at humanity in general. I mean, there's some people who have overcome incredible odds,
Mm-hmm.
and I think a lot of times we can forget that we can forget that we are stronger than we might think we are, and so that's a message that I hope that that people get from listening to my guests, but also that you have to do the work to get there.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
haven't gotten to where they are today by chance. I mean, you have to look at what are the issues and what's causing them. What can you do to get past them?
Yep.
It's not easy. It's not fun. Um, but if you can do it, then you can get to a place where you feel good, and it can be so worth it. Um, and I think there's also just this message of hope and healing
Yeah.
that's absolutely possible for anybody.
Sure, and I've talked. Yeah, it's incredible. Some of the people who were the most positive people I've ever talked to had these really tragic things happen in their life, and that was the catalyst. Like I know I talked to one guy. He was super successful, made a lot of money, all of this. Got into a bad car accident. The other person died, and he changed his whole life. It just changed his whole life, and I still think about it. It's like, what I know what it was for me, and I'm sure you know what it was for you. But there are these moments where it's like, this was what I'm doing today was not on my game plan when I was 20. Um, and it's when we learn, I think the value of life, that we were able to be stronger, be a stronger person, because it takes that. It takes learning that value, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, how many times do you think that you can't get through something and then you do?
Right.
When you're faced with that situation, you find a way.
Yeah. And we're resilient, and people need to believe that they're resilient. They're meant to be. Like any animal out there or any person out there. I mean, there's always someone with a worse story, but what I always say is, this is my story, though. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to watch some of the things out there where, people are living much, much worse than you. But this is your life, and you need to make it what you need to make it, and it needs to be lived on your terms. And I think that's what's really important to me, is that I start doing that, and that I have the confidence to do it. And anybody can do that.
Hmm.
If you had asked me 4 years ago if I could write a book, yeah, much less two, I would have said no, but I did it. It's like, you're much stronger than you ever think you could be, because once you decide to put your mind on doing something, it's amazing what you can do.
Hmm.
So what are you up to today? How can people reach you? What's the work? What's going on today?
Yeah, I have, my podcasts, which we've talked about, The Grass Gets Greener, and right now I'm focused on getting that to a place where I'm happy with, and it's kind of like, well, almost like on autopilot,
Hmm.
because I've been spending a lot of time like just in maintenance mode, and I want to start transitioning over into growth,
Yeah.
and creating new things. So so I'm close to, like, getting the podcast to where I want it to be. And a couple of years ago I had done a virtual summit, and maybe you remember that, Alan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of been sitting on the shelf, and you know what, I want to like make that available again for people. And I
Yeah.
think that could be a helpful resource, so I want to get that back out there, and really just kind of just building things up, taking the time to grow the audience, and grow this platform and build things up, and help as many people as I can. I mean, I've also started, to offer some coaching services as well,
Hmm.
for anyone who kind of just resonates with me and my story, and thinks that I can help them with what they're going through. So I have that available also. So, it's kind of like what I have going on today.
Cool. And I will definitely have links on the website page for people to reach you. So I have one last question. I know you do a last question. I do a last question. So, if you could tell me one thing that you're doing now to be a healthier you, what is it that you're doing today that's different than what you used to do?
I would have to say, just being more mindful,
Hmm.
like the things that we've been talking about here today. and just really being mindful of how I'm spending my time, um, of the thoughts that I'm allowing into my head, and of the people that I'm surrounding myself with too.
Yeah.
Because if you're surrounding yourself with negative people, then that's definitely going to contribute to stress and anxiety and bring you down. So I think, yeah, just being really, really mindful about the things I'm putting into my body, putting into my mind, and just trying to take more control of me.
Yeah.
So,
And it's just
yeah,
so, yeah, it's so important that we take care of ourselves and that we make ourselves some form of priority, and that we focus, I think, on what works for us. You know, not what works for somebody else that we want to do, but what works for us. And then again, we can take that and help others find what works for them. I always say everyone's different. I'm not promoting that everybody should do what I do, um, but knowing that, hey, we do what we do more of what we want to do, and that makes us feel better and healthier.
absolutely.
And definitely, I totally agree with what you're saying.
Hmm.
So thank you for being on the show. I love talking to you. I do, Melissa. I think we're kindred spirits in a lot of ways, and I love listening to your podcast and the work you're doing. So keep doing such a great job.
Thanks, Alan. I appreciate it, and it was great to be back on your show.
It's great to have you. So this is Alan Eisenberg with Healthy You. Join us next time.
Thank you for listening to Healthy University, brought to you by Bullying Recovery, LLC. This podcast does not replace the need for medical advice, professional diagnosis, opinion, treatment, or services to you or any other individual. The information provided here or through linkages to other sites is not a substitute for medical or professional care, and you should not use the information in place of a visit, call, consultation, or the advice of your physician or other healthcare provider. Join us next time for more Healthy University.